Hi, so we're back finishing up chapter 9. We've been talking about the production cycle and a lot about inventory. So a few last things to do. Do your pricing and compilation tests. Did all those numbers add up to the right number, right? So your inventory is comprised of raw materials that were purchased and paid for, right? So there's going to be vendor invoices. Your inventory and cost of goods sold are going to be computed using either LIFO, FIFO, weighted average. Maybe if it's some big expensive thing, there's actually specific identification. You need to trace that cost flow assumption and make sure that that number's right. How are they calculating it, and did it turn out okay? Again, we always have to keep in mind lower of cost or market. Were you watching out for those obsolete or even damaged items in their inventory that they're not going to be able to sell? Lower that valuation. On the invoices and everything else, check your extensions. In other words, number of units times cost or price, whichever you're looking at, equals something. Check that extension. Foot, the bottom total column. Make sure those numbers actually, that's the easiest way in the world to fake something, is to just have a big bunch of lines of stuff and then at the bottom write a total that's maybe not the total. So if all you do is match that bottom line number from that invoice or report or whatever over to the journal or ledger, maybe that wasn't the right number after all. Maybe those numbers didn't really add up to that. So check all that stuff on the extensions and the footing and foot that and agree it to the ledger, right? Of course, with presentation and disclosure, remember your client could have their inventory. Frequently, your client will have inventory that is subject to a lien. A lot of working capital loans are for inventory, and the inventory will be the collateral. So that needs to be disclosed. Make sure the discussions are complete. Anything that talks about the financial statements needs to be checked out. Little reminder of how the audit risk model works, although I know in this class you guys know, but when you're down here, right, on detection risk, you are responsible for adjusting detection risk to keep audit risk very low, right? So the higher the risk of material misstatement is, the lower you need detection risk to be. If risk of material misstatement is low, right, your client doesn't have high inherent risk, they have good controls in place, so the risk of material misstatement is very low. Okay, I can have higher risk in my detection risk because it's cheaper, right? I can do less. So how that works in this part of the cycle is when there's low detection, when you want low detection risk, right? So in other words, risk of material misstatement is high. So to keep audit risk low, I need detection risk to stay low, right? Well, if I need my detection risk to be very, very low, I observe physical inventory count at year end. Remember, we can adjust the nature, extent, and timing. So that's timing. Year end is a better test than, oh, I'm going to do it when they do their cycle count and just assume it rolls forward or do a little roll forward work, right? Testing at year end is a better timing. Extent, nature, extent, and timing. So the extent, take a bunch of test counts. Use a large sample. Right? Use a large sample. And of course, observing physical inventory is a better test than analytical procedures. But you can still do analytical procedures planning and at completion to see that they match. Moderate, hey, do some inventory count at interim date, do test roll forward, some vouching. If you are fine with a high detection risk, in other words, risk of material misstatement is low, so detection risk can be high, then you can rely on your analytical procedures. Oh yeah, they should match up. Hey, observe some counts, do it at interim, it's fine, don't worry about it too much. But that's how audit risk model works, right? So you change the nature, extent, and timing depending on how risky that material misstatement is. Finally, you do have to always consider the possibility of fraud. Either occupational fraud, because some kinds of inventory employees like to steal. Even raw material inventory, sometimes they like to steal. So that can get counts to be wrong. And inventory and cost of goods sold is a place where they do mess with the financial statement. So management fraud is also a possibility. Uncontrolled access to inventory and many high dollar items with market value, that tends to be where the employee fraud comes in. So occupational type fraud, just taking inventory, selling it on eBay, something like that. You have to be careful. Unexpected counts, large differences between counts, that's your red flag right there. What is going on? You're going to have to do even more counts now and figure out, go back even more. Inventory shows signs of damage, obsolescence, or excess quantities. So damage or obsolescence, they're not worth as much. So that could be on purpose, then that would be fraud. Excess quantities, so sometimes producing in order to get inventory. Unusual interplant transfers. Again, that's a way to hide that you don't really have the inventory. They'll tell you, oh yeah, we have, you'll say, where's this $1 million worth of inventory? Oh, that's at the other office. Oh, that's in transit going to our store. Oh, that's on its way here, right? So unusual transfers, especially at year end. These people know inventory is coming up. Reluctance to move something to allow inspection, right? So in other words, your empty boxes, that kind of thing, your hollow pallets. You should be able to look at anything you want to look at. If not, then that's a big fraud red flag. So that takes care of talking about production cycle and in particular inventory. Now you should be ready to go take your quiz.